Have you ever wondered who you really are? Not your name, not your job, not the address printed on your ID, but the deeper self. And what if, one night, a stranger calls your number and mistakes you for someone else? Would you laugh and hang up, or would you step into the role of that mistaken identity and let it rewrite your entire life? That's how the New York Trilogy begins. 3 stories, 3 mirrors, 3 men searching for truth in the maze of New York City. But the truth here is slippery, like mist rising from the streets after a night of rain. Every time you think you found it, it vanishes, leaving behind only silence. Paul Auster, the author of this haunting masterpiece, doesn't just tell stories. He breaks them open. He pulls apart reality, language, and identity until you're not sure if you're reading about a character or about yourself. New York here is not just a backdrop. It's a living, breathing presence, a labyrinth of streets and shadows, fire escapes and windows, voices and echoes. And within it, men wander, writers, detectives, dreamers, each of them lost, each of them trying to write or watch or follow someone else, only to end up staring into their own reflection. So tonight, let me take you into this trilogy. We'll walk together through these dimly lit streets, past the echo of footsteps, past the unanswered questions, and into the heart of 3 mysterious tales. Each one is a piece of a puzzle, and together they whisper the same thing, that to search for another is always to search for yourself. And now, let's begin with the first story, City of Glass. It begins with a mistake. A phone rings in the middle of the night. A man named Quinn picks it up. He's a writer, a lonely figure, living in a small apartment in New York. Once upon a time, he wrote poetry. Later, he wrote novels, but now he makes his living by ghost writing detective stories under a pseudonym. He spends his nights walking the city, his days scribbling into notebooks, detached from the world, drifting like a shadow. On the other end of the line, a desperate voice asks for a private detective named Paul Auster. Quinn says, "You have the wrong number," and hangs up. But the phone rings again and again, the same plea, the same mistake, and Quinn, instead of ignoring it, feels something stir in him, a curiosity, a longing. Why not, he thinks, why not step into this other name, this other life? And so Quinn becomes Paul Auster, private investigator. The case he takes is strange. A man named Peter Stillman hires him to protect him from his father, a father who once locked him away in a dark room as a child. For years, no light, no touch, no human voice. The father believed that by isolating his child from all language, the boy would speak the original tongue of God. Can you imagine it? A child left to the silence so that the first words to form in his mouth might be divine. Peter grew up broken. His speech is fragmented, his gestures unsettling, like someone who never quite learned how to belong to this world. And now, years later, his father has been released from prison. Peter fears he will come back. He needs protection. He needs someone to watch. Quinn steps into the role with the seriousness of a detective. He follows the old man, Stillman Sr., through the streets of New York. Day after day, notebook in hand, he trails him. And here's where the strangeness deepens. The old man seems to wander without purpose, moving block by block, street by street, sometimes tracing patterns in the city itself, as if the city is a text and he is writing upon it with his footsteps. Quinn records it all. His notes grow obsessive. Pages filled with maps and words and thoughts. He begins to lose track of where Stillman ends and he begins. Is he a detective following a suspect, or a writer chasing a character, or simply a man adrift, inventing meaning in the chaos of the city? And then comes the mirror moment. In a surreal twist, Quinn decides to meet the real Paul Auster. Not the detective, but the actual writer. Yes, Paul Auster himself is written into the story. He meets him, hoping for clarity, but the writer shrugs. He is not a detective. He cannot help. And suddenly the name, the role, the mask Quinn has been wearing dissolves into nothing. From there, the descent is rapid. Quinn abandons his home. He spends his nights on park benches, in alleyways, in the dark corners of the city, consumed by the surveillance, consumed by writing. His body weakens, his mind spirals, until finally he is left with nothing but his notebook. And even that ends mid-sentence, as if the story itself can no longer hold him. The first glass shatters. The city remains, but the man is gone. Some stories don't start with action. They start with watching, with silence, with a man in a room staring across at another man in another room. This is how the second tale begins. The man we follow is named Blue. He is a detective trained by a man called Brown, hired by a man called White. His job, to watch a man named Black. Yes, the names are colors. Simple, stripped bare, like pieces on a chessboard. But as the days unfold, you realize nothing about this story is simple. Blue is told, sit in an apartment across the street, watch, write down everything Black does. Don't interfere. Don't ask questions. Just observe. And so he does. He sets up his room, looks out the window, and across from him, Black lives in his small apartment. Day after day, Blue watches, and Black does almost nothing. He reads, he writes, he walks around, he sits, he stares. At first, Blue writes diligent reports, each day a neat description of what Black did. But how do you describe someone who does nothing? How do you report silence, repetition, the hum of a man turning pages? Blue fills his pages anyway, words, sentences, notes, but slowly the work begins to consume him. He starts to wonder, who is Black? Why is he being watched? What is White's interest in him? And the deeper question, who is Blue now? Is he a detective or just a prisoner of his own gaze? Weeks pass, months. The act of watching becomes unbearable. Have you ever stared at someone for so long that they begin to dissolve, and all you're left with is yourself? That's what happens to Blue. He starts to imagine that Black is aware of him, that maybe Black is writing about him, just as he is writing about Black. He begins to suspect that the real subject of this surveillance is not Black at all, but himself. The boundaries blur. Is he spying on a man, or is he trapped in a mirror, forced to look at his own loneliness, his own emptiness, projected across the street? The longer blue stairs, the less of himself remains. His own identity begins to collapse, swallowed by the silence of the assignment. And when he finally decides to confront Black, to break the silence, it doesn't bring answers. It only brings the realization that perhaps this was the plan all along, to entangle him in endless watching, endless writing, endless questioning, until he becomes nothing but a ghost of himself. The second story closes like the first, without resolution, without clarity. Just another man erased by his own reflection. And the city goes on, unbothered, indifferent. The third story begins quietly. No phone call this time, no assignment, just an absence. A man named Fanshawe has disappeared. He was once the narrator's closest friend, brilliant, intense, withdrawn. A writer whose talent was undeniable, but whose presence in the world was always uncertain, fragile, as if he never fully belonged to ordinary life. And then one day he vanishes, no explanation, no goodbye. What remains is a package. Inside it, manuscripts, notebooks, unfinished texts, and a letter, a request. If Fanshawe never returns, the narrator is asked to take responsibility for his work, to edit it, to publish it, to make sure his words don't disappear with him. At first, the narrator hesitates, but slowly, almost unknowingly, he steps into Fanshawe's place. He reads the manuscripts and realizes they are extraordinary. The books are published. They succeed. Critics praise the mysterious writer who never appears in public, and the narrator becomes the visible face of an invisible man. But that's only the beginning. Soon, the narrator's involvement goes deeper. He meets Fanshawe's wife. He grows close to her. He becomes part of Fanshawe's family, his child's life, his empty home. And little by little, something unsettling happens. The narrator starts living the life Fanshawe abandoned, not out of malice, not out of ambition, but because the absence creates a vacuum, and someone must fill it. Yet the question never leaves him. Why did Fanshawe disappear? Was it a choice, an escape, or a final act of refusal, to be seen, to be named, to be fixed into an identity? The narrator begins searching for him. This search becomes obsessive. He travels, he follows faint clues, he chases rumors and shadows, and finally he finds him. Fanshawe is alive, but he does not want to be found. He has chosen erasure, not death, but disappearance, not silence, but distance. He refuses to return, refuses to reclaim his work, refuses even friendship, because to Fanshawe, being seen is a kind of imprisonment. Words trap him, recognition cages him, and life, as others live it, feels like a locked room he escaped long ago. In the end, the narrator must face the truth. Fanshawe is not just a lost friend. He is the narrator's double, the version of himself who dared to vanish completely. And the locked room is not a place, it is identity itself. The story closes not with answers, but with acceptance. Some people are meant to stay, some are meant to disappear, and neither choice guarantees peace. And so the trilogy ends the same way it began, with a man standing alone, surrounded by words, facing the silence between them. The New York Trilogy is not about solving mysteries. It is about becoming one. 3 stories, 3 men, 3 ways of losing oneself. Through watching, through writing, through vanishing. Paul Auster reminds us that identity is fragile, unstable, and endlessly rewritable. That sometimes the greatest mystery is not who others are, but who we become when no one is watching. And maybe that's why this book stays with you. Because long after the last page, it leaves you with a question that echoes softly in the dark. If you could disappear, would you?